The world was young, still pulsing with the raw breath of creation, when the first shadows began to stretch across the land. In those early days, night was not yet fully formed, nor was death known as an unyielding law. Life moved with the rhythm of endless dawns, and the spirits of earth and sky wandered without the weight of mortality pressing upon their shoulders. Yet even in such a tender world, there existed a quiet truth waiting to be unveiled, that all beginnings must be answered by endings, that every first breath carries within it the seed of the last. It was in this truth that her presence arose, mysterious, sensual, and inevitable. Her name was Haine Nui Tepo. The story begins in the hushed liminality between day and night, when the horizon blushes with fading light and the sky drinks in its first stars. The sun sighs its farewell, and the moon rises, draped in silver mystery. It is here, in the trembling boundary between radiance and shadow, that her power is felt. The winds grow slower, the ocean settles into a steady heartbeat, and the air itself seems to listen. The whispers of stars take on the shape of a song, a delicate hymn that belongs to her. Every rustling leaf, every soft fall of twilight speaks of her presence. She is not simply night, she is the pulse that makes night alive, a figure whose beauty lingers at the edge of perception, as though the world itself holds its breath when she passes. Haine Nui Tepo was not always the keeper of endings. Once she was Haine Tetama, the radiant daughter of the first dawn. She embodied innocence, light, and the blush of morning. Her laughter resembled the shimmer of dew caught on petals, and her steps spread brightness wherever they fell. She was beloved of all beings, for she carried within her the promise of beginnings, of fresh awakenings, of eternal spring. But light, untempered, can sometimes be too pure to survive the truths hidden in the fabric of the world. Her radiance could not last untouched by shadow. The day she discovered her father was also her husband, her spirit cracked. Betrayal seeped into her heart, and grief, too sharp and raw, made her turn away from the sunlit fields she once ruled. She fled to the realm of shadows, and there, transformed by sorrow, she became Haine Nui Tepo, the great woman of the night, goddess of death, inevitable and eternal.
Yet even in transformation, beauty did not abandon her. If anything, it deepened, acquiring a power that was no longer innocent but irresistible. She carried herself as one who had felt the sting of heartbreak and reshaped it into strength. Her skin glowed faintly like polished stone beneath the moonlight. Her hair flowed like a river of midnight stars, and her eyes, dark yet shining, held the weight of secrets that no mortal could bear for long. Those who spoke of her described both fear and fascination. She was dangerous, yes, but also alluring, an embrace that promised both release and finality. Her dual nature was not merely a legend, it was the very balance of existence itself. She was the dawn that had surrendered its brightness to the night, and in doing so, she became the truth no being could escape. The underworld she chose as her dwelling pulsed with quiet power. It was not a place of torment, but of stillness, where the souls of mortals came to rest in her keeping. There, shadows drifted like slow rivers, and the earth's heartbeat echoed as a lullaby. The dead did not fear her embrace, for it was tender even in its inevitability. She touched them like a mother welcoming her children home, her whispers soothing, her gaze heavy with understanding. She knew sorrow intimately, and so she carried within her the power to console those who entered her realm. Yet her embrace was also unyielding. No one who passed into her arms ever returned. This too was her sensuality, the inevitability of surrender, the deep pull of desire to let go, to rest, to cease striving against time. Death, under her care, was not simply an ending, it was a final union. Above the mortal world, whispers of her grew. She was spoken of in twilight songs, in the murmur of waves against shorelines, in the rustle of winds that passed through reeds at dusk. Some feared her, clinging desperately to the fragile warmth of life. Others revered her, recognizing that she was not an enemy, but the answer to life's most ancient question. Even the trickster hero Maui, restless and daring, could not ignore her presence. To him, she was the final boundary to be challenged, the last force to be conquered. But what he saw as conquest was in truth an attempt to deny her role in the cycle of creation. For Hine Nui Te Ko was not merely a goddess to be fought, she was the cycle itself, the dark womb into which all things return. In her presence, desire and fear twined together like lovers. To see her was to feel the weight of mortality pressing close, to feel the shiver of inevitability along one's skin. And yet, there was also fascination, the quiet yearning for release, the magnetic pull of surrendering to her. Her beauty was not meant to inspire conquest, but to remind the living of their own fragile temporality. Her lips, full and red, were said to hold the power of the last kiss. Her thighs, vast and strong, were described as gateways no man could pass without being consumed. Her body, immense and divine, embodied both temptation and inevitability. Mortals spoke of her with hushed voices, as though even the sound of her name carried both doom and longing. This duality, life's radiant dawn and death's embracing night, was the essence of her myth. She was not merely the end, but also the keeper of balance. Without her, the world would collapse beneath endless beginnings with no release, no rest, no renewal. She was sorrow, yes, but she was also necessity. In her, heartbreak became sacred, grief transformed into cosmic law. The betrayal that once broke her did not diminish her. It elevated her, weaving her into the very structure of the universe. Death was no longer a punishment, but an inevitability bound by sensual grace. Through her, every mortal was promised an end that was not empty, but filled with her presence. As night deepened,
and the stars thickened above. Her story rippled through the hearts of those who dared to listen. The boundary she ruled over, the veil between life and death, was not a wall, but a passage. To live was to walk toward her, to dance in the sunlight, knowing that her embrace waited in the distance. Some resisted, cursing her name, trying to wrestle with her inevitability. Others looked upon the night sky and whispered to her, yearning for the peace she offered. Both responses she welcomed, for Hind Nui Te Po did not demand love nor fear. She simply existed, eternal and patient, watching as mortals cycled through their brief stories before coming to rest in her arms. Thus the myth begins with the birth of night, with the first stirrings of mortality, with the goddess who turned from dawn to shadow. Her presence marked the transition of the world from innocence to truth, from endless beginnings to cycles bound by endings. She is both tragic and magnificent, a figure whose sensual power arises not from conquest, but from inevitability. She is the kiss of the horizon as the sun sinks, the silence after a final breath, the dark womb that cradles even as it consumes. She is Hind Nui Te Po, and in her story, the world first learned what it meant to die and what it meant to be held by the night.
The story of Hine Nui Te Po cannot be told without unveiling those who stand around her, those who define her by their love, their longing, or their defiance. For in myth, no figure exists alone. Every god, every mortal, every spirit is bound by the threads of others, tangled in desire, fear, and fate. And so, as the night unfurls, let us draw each character into the light of memory, shaping their essence with words, so their roles may breathe and echo within the tale. At the heart stands Hine Nui Te Po herself, once radiant as Hine Titama, now transformed into the great woman of night. She embodies sorrow reshaped into sovereignty. She is sensual in the way shadows linger against the skin, in the way silence curls around the heart, in the way the final kiss of twilight carries both sweetness and ache. Her sorrow is not weakness, but the root of her strength. Betrayal shattered her innocence, yet from that wound arose the goddess who would cradle the world's endings. Her beauty is not of innocence, but of inevitability. Her skin glows faintly like polished stone beneath the moonlight. Her hair falls in long rivers of darkness, and her lips, red as blood and ripe fruit, speak softly of both promise and peril. Her thighs, vast and strong, are described as the very threshold of death, a gate no mortal may pass without being consumed. Within her body rests the symbol of all mortality, the passage through which even heroes must yield. And yet she is not cruelty itself. There is tenderness in her gaze, a maternal depth that holds grief and understanding together. Her eyes, luminous as midnight stars, seem to see through the veils of life, recognizing the pain and beauty of every soul that passes into her keeping. She is tragic, yes, for she once loved the dawn and now rules the night. Yet her tragedy is clothed in power, in inevitability, in the intimacy of mortality itself. Beside her story rises another figure, Maui, the restless trickster, hero, and challenger of fate. His spirit is fire where hers is shadow, his daring a constant friction against inevitability. He is bold, cunning, and unafraid to touch what others fear. For him, life is not something to be accepted, but something to be stretched, bent, or even conquered. The world has long sung of his deeds, how he slowed the sun to lengthen the day, how he fished islands from the sea, how he tricked, laughed, and defied even the sacred order of creation. He has lived by wit and courage, shaping the world with his restless hands.
But within him is also a hunger that can never be filled, a fire that no victory can extinguish. Each triumph leaves him restless, searching for the next. To Maui, death is the last boundary left unconquered, the one force that mocks his endless daring. Where others bow in fear, he rises in defiance. Where others whisper prayers, he plots a trick. In Hine Nui Te Po, he does not see sorrow or inevitability. He sees a challenge, a mountain to be climbed, a victory that would crown all his victories. His motive is not reverence, but conquest, not understanding, but denial. He believes with all his fiery audacity that he might crawl through her body and emerge reborn, dragging with him the promise of immortality for all humankind. He is daring, restless, and blind to the intimacy that underlies her role. Where she is acceptance, he is resistance. Where she is inevitability, he is rebellion. Their meeting is not simply a clash of two beings, but a clash of philosophies, surrender against denial, eternity against fire, shadow against flame. Yet the myth does not belong to them alone. Around their figures move the quiet spirits and cosmic forces that shape the balance of existence. The spirits of the dead, gentle and silent, drift toward Hine's domain, their presence soft as falling leaves. They are not loud characters, but they are essential. They remind us that her role is not cruelty, but necessity, that she does not chase the living, but receives them when their time is done. These souls, pale as mist, move without resistance, drawn to her like rivers to the sea. To them she is not terror, but comfort, a mother whose arms gather them close after the weariness of life. Their surrender is not defeat, but peace, and in their whispers lies the truth of her domain. Above them, beyond them, the cosmic forces watch. The stars, the sun, the moon, all are silent witnesses to this unfolding drama. The sun once embraced her as Hine Titama, and its betrayal was the spark that transformed her into Hine Nui Te Po. The moon, pale and watchful, mirrors her in the night, carrying her story across endless skies. Even the stars that scatter like jewels are tied to her, for their whispers are said to be her voice, guiding souls as they cross the threshold. Each glimmer is a reminder that she is present, that her embrace extends as far as the horizon. These cosmic presences, though voiceless, give weight to the tale. They are the stage upon which Hine and Maui enact their roles, eternal and inevitable. Each character, then, embodies more than themselves. Hine Nui Te Po is not merely a goddess, but the living truth of mortality,
her sensual sorrow a reminder of the sweetness of life and the beauty of its end. Maui is not merely a trickster, but the restless fire of human defiance, the refusal to accept limits, the thirst to grasp immortality with mortal hands. The spirits are the echoes of all who have lived, each one a reminder that the story is not abstract, but deeply personal. Every soul will one day feel the touch of her night, and the cosmos is the frame, the eternal reminder that this story is not just about gods, but about the order of existence itself. In this weaving of characters, desire becomes clear. Hine desires recognition, not in the sense of conquest or worship, but in the quiet, sorrowful way that a figure born of betrayal longs to be seen not as monstrous, but as necessary, even beautiful. Her tragedy is that she is both feared and misunderstood, her sensual power mistaken for terror, when it is, in truth, intimacy. Maui desires triumph, driven by restless ambition, desperate to etch his name against the walls of eternity. His tragedy is that he cannot see beyond his hunger, cannot feel the depth of her embrace as anything but a challenge. The spirits desire peace, their motives simple, their surrender already given. And the cosmos is the frame, the eternal reminder that this story is not just about gods, but about the order of existence itself. The stage is now set, the characters drawn with strokes of shadow and flame. In their meeting, we see the inevitable weaving of sorrow and defiance, of desire and denial. Hine Nui Te Po, vast and sensual, tragic yet sovereign, stands as the keeper of endings, her motives rooted in acceptance and inevitability. Maui, daring and restless, rises as her counterpart, his motives born of denial and ambition. Around them drift the spirits, soft and surrendering, while the cosmos itself leans in to witness. Together they form the cast of this myth, each one bound to the story's pulse, each one carrying the weight of desire that will soon collide. Their motives, their essence, their beauty and their flaws intertwine, preparing the way for conflict, for longing, for the inevitable climax that awaits.
The air grew heavy with unspoken tension as Maui's restless heart fixed upon the final mystery. For all his triumphs, slowing the sun, taming the seas, drawing islands from the deep, he remained haunted by one truth he could not trick or trap: death. It lingered in the eyes of his people, in the withering of flowers, in the slow decay of flesh. He watched the old grow frail, he saw warriors fall, and he felt the relentless march of time upon his own body. No feet could halt it, no laughter could silence its certainty. And so, in his fiery defiance, Maui's thoughts turned to Hine Nui Te Po. She was not merely a goddess to him, she was the embodiment of the barrier he most despised. She was inevitability clothed in shadow and sorrow, holding in her vast body the final law that no hero had yet broken. To conquer her would mean to conquer death itself. To crawl through her body, through the gate of mortality she guarded, and emerge alive, would be to bring humanity eternal life. The thought consumed him. To Maui, this was not just desire, it was destiny, a flame burning within him, daring him to attempt what no being had ever dreamed. And yet, beneath his ambition, there stirred a subtler longing, for in truth, Hine Nui Tepo's beauty unsettled him. Her form was vast, her presence overwhelming, her lips glowing like crimson blossoms in moonlight. She frightened him, but in that fear there was also fascination. The trickster who laughed at danger found himself silenced at the thought of her, not because she was monstrous, but because she was irresistible. He told himself his desire was conquest, but somewhere deeper, he yearned for the intimacy of touching her threshold, of knowing her in the most forbidden way. To enter her was to defy her, yes, but also to unite with her, to embrace the very embodiment of mortality. Desire and fear tangled inside him, each heartbeat a battle between triumph and surrender. Hine Nui Tepo, in her realm of shadows, felt the stirring of his intent. She did not need to hear his words to know his thoughts, for desire carried its own vibration, a ripple that spread across the veil of night. She felt him like a spark pressing against her stillness, an ember burning in defiance of her calm. She did not rage at his ambition. Rage belonged to the impatient. Instead, she sighed with sorrow, for she understood what he did not, that no defiance can unmake the truth of endings. Yet in his audacity, she sensed something that touched her own hidden longing.
For within her lay a quiet ache, born of betrayal and deepened by centuries of solitude. She was feared, misunderstood, revered in whispers, yet seldom loved for what she truly was. Mortals spoke her name in dread. Heroes sought to cheat her, and even gods turned their faces from her domain. What she longed for was not conquest, but recognition. She yearned to be seen not as an obstacle, but as a sovereign, not as a terror, but as a truth clothed in beauty. And within that longing another stirred, a longing for release, for intimacy, for the touch of one who might approach her not with weapons, but with surrender. Maui's approach, reckless though it was, carried with it the seed of that intimacy. He would not name it as such, for he thought himself driven only by conquest, but she, with her sorrowful eyes, saw deeper. She knew that every act of defiance against death was, at its root, a form of yearning. A yearning to live forever, to love without end, to escape the ache of separation. And in that yearning lay a strange kind of desire that resonated with her own. Thus the conflict sharpened, not simply as hero against goddess, but as desire colliding with fear. Maui's desire to overcome mortality pressed against his fear of being consumed. Hine Nui Tepo's longing for recognition and intimacy pressed against her fear of being reduced to nothing but a threshold to be violated. Between them stretched a tension as old as time itself, the living refusing to let go, the keeper of endings longing to be embraced not in dread, but in reverence. The night of their meeting drew near, heavy with fate. Maui gathered his companions, birds who had long aided him in his tricks. He whispered his plan. While Hini Nui Tipo slept, he would slip into her body, entering through her sacred threshold, crawling through her vast form until he emerged from her mouth. If he succeeded, death itself would be undone. His companions trembled, for even in their courage they felt the weight of the goddess. Yet Maui's confidence burned too bright to be dimmed. He laughed, his teeth flashing in the moonlight, his eyes fierce with determination.
Far below, in her realm, Hinane lay resting. She was vast, her body stretching across the underworld, her breath deep as tides, her form glowing with the quiet shimmer of night. She seemed asleep, yet she was aware, as gods of her kind are always aware. She felt the approach of Maui and his flock, their wings rustling like uneasy hearts. She knew his plan, had known it from the moment desire first took root in him, and though she might have crushed him with a thought, she did not, for part of her longed to be touched, to be approached, even if in folly. She did not desire conquest, but she desired to be recognized, to be faced, to be held as more than a shadow. As Maui crept closer, the night thickened. His laughter faltered, for the nearer he came, the more her presence pressed upon him. He felt the vastness of her thighs, strong as mountains, the heat of her body radiating like a fire hidden in darkness. He swallowed, his bravado trembling beneath the weight of her beauty. Yet he pressed on, for to falter was to surrender, and Maui knew no surrender. His desire overpowered his fear, though his body shivered as he looked upon the great goddess of night. And Hinane, in her silence, watched. She saw him not only as a trickster, but as a soul ablaze with longing. His approach was reckless, but within it lay a truth, that life clings desperately to itself, that desire to continue burns hotter than any flame. She recognized in him the yearning of all mortals, the refusal to let go, the thirst to deny her embrace. And though she pitied him, she also admired the fire. For fire, after all, was beautiful, even if it burned itself out. Thus the stage was set, the conflict sharp and aching. Maui's desire to overcome mortality pressed him into danger. Hinane's hidden longing for recognition and intimacy kept her still, allowing him to approach, though she knew the end was certain. Fear curled between them like smoke, twining with desire, impossible to separate. Mortality versus immortality, love versus power, denial versus acceptance. Each force drew tighter, building toward a union that could not end in peace. The night held its breath. The stars dimmed, the winds stilled, the earth itself waited. Maui crouched at the threshold of her body, trembling and grinning, ready to defy eternity. Hinane lay vast and glowing, her sorrowful beauty filling the sky, ready to receive him not as a lover, not as a conqueror, but as a mortal about to learn the truth. And in that silence,
The deepest tension of all surged, not whether he would succeed, but what it would mean for both of them if he did or if he failed.
The night had grown unbearably still. The stars hung above like suspended breaths, as though the heavens themselves paused to watch. Maui crouched at the edge of Haini Nui Tepo's vast body, his eyes flashing with determination, his heart pulsing with both defiance and unease. Before him lay the threshold, her sacred gate, a passage both feared and revered. It glowed faintly in the darkness, a place of mystery and danger, a door that no mortal or god had ever dared to cross. His companions, the birds who had followed him faithfully, shifted on their perches, feathers ruffling with unease. They whispered warnings, their voices tight with dread. "Maui," they murmured, "turn back. This is not a path for heroes, but for endings. She is the night, the keeper of mortality. To enter her is not victory, it is surrender." But Maui only laughed, though the sound trembled in his throat. "Have I not slowed the sun? Have I not pulled islands from the sea? What is death but another foe to conquer? What is Haini Nui Tepo but another challenge to my cunning? If I pass through her, mankind will live forever. Our children will know no grave. Our people will never fade. This is the destiny of Maui." He pressed forward, his body trembling, but his spirit blazing. Each step closer to her made him feel smaller, for Heen's form stretched vast as mountains, radiant in her terrible beauty. Her skin shimmered with the glow of night. Her lips gleamed red like the blossoms of the Pohutukawa tree, and her hair spilled around her like a tide of darkness. She lay still, yet her stillness was alive, pulsing, aware. Maui swallowed hard, his bravado straining against the weight of her presence. He bent low, preparing to enter, his hands brushing against the threshold that separated life from death. The heat of her body radiated outward, intoxicating and suffocating all at once. To touch her was to feel the inevitability of endings. To draw near was to sense that his own fire was but a fleeting spark compared to her eternal shadow. And yet, in his arrogance, he believed.
He placed his hand upon her, and for an instant he faltered. Her warmth was overwhelming, her power undeniable. It was not like touching a wall to be broken, nor a door to be forced open. It was like touching the heart of existence itself. She was not an obstacle, she was the truth. To enter her was to accept that truth fully, to let go of all resistance, all illusion of control. But Maui was not one to surrender. With a breath drawn deep into his chest, he pressed forward, sliding into the threshold of her body. His companions gasped, their feathers shivering, their eyes wide with dread. They dared not move, dared not speak too loudly for fear of drawing her attention too soon. Inside, darkness closed around him. He crawled forward, muscles straining, breath shallow, determination carrying him deeper.
The passage was both terrifying and strangely intimate, the sensation unlike anything he had ever known. Her body pressed against him, surrounding him, and in every movement he felt the pulse of inevitability. His pride burned brighter, as though to prove himself stronger than the goddess herself. But Hine Nui Tepo was not asleep. She had known his approach long before, had felt the tremor of his desire, the vibration of his ambition. She allowed him to enter, not because she was powerless, but because she understood what was unfolding. This was not simply a trickster's conquest. It was a moment where life and death touched, where defiance met inevitability. She could have crushed him instantly, but she did not. She let him come closer, for in his foolishness there was also a strange tenderness. His desire to deny her was in truth a yearning to hold on to life, to love without end, to escape the sorrow of separation. And though she knew he would fail, she let him try, for in that failure lay the revelation humanity needed. Her body stirred faintly, a shift like the rolling of distant thunder. Her companions, watching from afar, could no longer hold their silence. Their unease grew too heavy, and as Maui crawled deeper, the tension became unbearable. Nervous laughter burst from the birds, shrill and piercing against the stillness. Their voices rose in frightened chatter, and in that moment the quiet veil of the night was shattered. Hine Nui Tepo opened her eyes. They glowed with sorrowful fire, vast and terrible, reflecting both beauty and inevitability. Her lips parted, crimson against the dark, and her body moved with slow, devastating grace. She was no longer still. She was awake, aware, and all-encompassing. Maui froze within her, his body trembling. For the first time, true fear seized him. He realized the depth of his folly, the arrogance of believing he could pass through the goddess of death. She was not a mountain to be scaled, nor an enemy to be tricked. She was eternity itself, and he had dared to crawl into her embrace.
Her thighs closed around him, strong as cliffs, unyielding as the earth. Her body clenched, not in rage, but in inevitability, and Maui was caught. The trickster, who had conquered so many forces, now found himself powerless, pinned in the embrace of the goddess. He struggled, twisting, his laughter gone, his bravado stripped away, yet his strength meant nothing. Hine's eyes softened, filled with sorrow, even as her power consumed him. She was not cruel, though her act was final. She held him, not as a victor holds the vanquished, but as a mother holds a defiant child, as a lover holds one who cannot stay. Her lips glowed, her breath deepened, and with a final surge, Maui was crushed, extinguished, undone. The moment was both intimate and destructive. His body, his fire, his daring, all dissolved into her vastness. He did not pass through her. Instead, he was absorbed by her, claimed by the truth he sought to deny. In that instant, the union was complete, life and death joined, defiance consumed by inevitability, desire surrendered into sorrowful embrace. The world trembled. His companions screamed, their cries echoing into the night, feathers scattering in panic as they fled. But Hine Nui Tepo only closed her eyes once more, returning to stillness. The act was done. Death
would remain unconquered. Mortality was forever sealed. And yet, though Maui failed, something deeper was revealed. For in his attempt, in his reckless desire to deny endings, he touched the essence of Hine herself. He showed that even in defiance, mortals yearned not for conquest, but for closeness, for intimacy with the eternal. His failure became humanity's truth, that death cannot be escaped, but it can be embraced, not as a terror, but as an inevitable union, both sensual and sorrowful. The night sighed, the stars resumed their glow, and silence returned to the world. Maui was gone, but his story remained. And within the vast stillness of Hine Nui Te Po, the memory of his touch lingered, not as victory, but as recognition. For the first time in many ages, she had been faced not with denial alone, but with desire, with fire, with intimacy, even in failure. And so the climax was sealed, a union of destruction and tenderness, a moment where mortality collided with immortality, leaving behind not triumph, but truth.
The night exhaled a slow breath as silence reclaimed the world. The stars returned to their quiet shimmer, and the winds, which had hushed in awe, stirred once again. Where Maui had once crouched in defiance, there was now only stillness, the faint tremor of a struggle ended. His laughter, his bold promises, his daring, all had dissolved into the vast body of Hine Nui Te Po. The trickster's fire had been quenched, his light extinguished. Death, unconquered, remained sovereign. The birds, Maui's companions, fled in terror. Their cries pierced the night as they scattered into the sky, feathers drifting like broken fragments of hope. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. Even Maui, who had bent the sun and drawn islands from the sea, could not cheat the goddess of death. If he could not pass through her, if even his cunning and strength were not enough, then what chance did any mortal have? Their wings beat furiously as they vanished into the distance, carrying with them the seed of a new knowledge, a story that would echo across generations. Hine Nui Te Po lay once more in stillness, her vast form glowing faintly against the dark. She was not triumphant, though she had prevailed. There was no laughter, no boast, no cruel exultation. Instead, her face remained sorrowful, her eyes heavy with the burden of her role. She had not crushed Maui out of malice, nor had she sought to humiliate him. She had only done what she must, for she was the keeper of endings, and endings cannot be denied. And yet, in the quiet of her body, she felt the echo of his presence. His struggle, reckless though it was, had brushed against her in a way no other ever had. He had dared to crawl into her, to attempt intimacy with the truth she embodied. He had not seen her as a distant abstraction, but as a threshold to be touched, to be crossed, to be conquered. Though his attempt had failed, it left within her the faintest shimmer of recognition, an acknowledgement that even in defiance, mortals longed for her, reached for her, could not ignore her. Still, Maui's downfall was final. His story became more than a failed attempt at glory.
It became the reason that all mortals must die. Had he succeeded, humanity would have been freed from the shadow of endings, but because he failed, death remained eternal, inevitable, unescapable.
His desire to make life endless had instead sealed the law that no mortal could ever undo. His failure was not just his own. It was the inheritance of all people. From that night forward, death became the rhythm of the world. No man, no woman, no child could escape it. Life would bloom and wither, as flowers did beneath the sun. Bodies would rise strong and proud, then bend and fade. Love would burn hot, then dissolve into memory. The cycle could not be broken. And yet, within that cycle, there was tragic beauty, for endings gave meaning to beginnings, and partings gave weight to every meeting. The inevitability of death wove itself into the fabric of existence, binding humanity to a truth that could not be denied. Hine Nui Tepo, in her sorrowful majesty, became both feared and revered. Mortals spoke her name in hushed tones, some in dread, others in reverence. She was the gate that none could pass unscathed, the mother who claimed all children in time, the lover who embraced every soul in her endless body. To some, she was terror. To others, she was release. To all, she was the boundary none could evade. The memory of Maui's failure spread far and wide. The birds who had watched carried the tale to every corner of the land. They spoke of his boldness, his cunning, his final folly. They told of how he had entered the goddess of death, how he had sought to cheat her, and how at last he had been consumed. The story echoed across generations, shaping the understanding of life itself. Children grew hearing it. Warriors remembered it before battle. Lovers whispered it beneath the stars. It was a warning, a truth, a song of inevitability. Death cannot be conquered, and all must bow to Hine Nui Tepo. Yet, though the tale carried sorrow, it also carried a strange kind of comfort. For if death could not be escaped, then perhaps it could be accepted. If even Maui could not defy her, then perhaps there was no shame in surrendering when the time came. Perhaps to die was not failure, but completion, not defeat, but reunion. For in the embrace of Hine Nui Tepo, there was no cruelty, only inevitability, clothed in beauty and sorrow. The world itself seemed to change after that night. The sun still rose, but its descent carried new weight, for each sunset now whispered of endings. The moon still glowed, but its fading reminded mortals of their own fading. The seasons still turned, but their cycles became mirrors of human life. Birth in the spring, fullness in the summer, fading in the autumn, silence in the winter. Everywhere, in every pattern, the hand of Hine Nui Tepo was felt. And yet life continued. Children laughed, lovers embraced, warriors fought, poets sang. The inevitability of death did not end life, it deepened it. For knowing that each moment would one day pass made each moment precious. Knowing that every embrace would end made each embrace sweeter. The shadow of Hinenui Tepo stretched over all things, but rather than extinguishing them, it gave them shape, gave them urgency, gave them meaning. For Maui's failure was not simply the preservation of death, it was also the birth of meaning. Without death, life would stretch endlessly, unchanging, unmarked. But with death, each heartbeat mattered, each breath carried weight, each love became unforgettable precisely because it would not last forever. Hinenui Tepo, in her stillness, understood this. Though she was sorrowful, she was also essential. Without her, the world would lose its depth. Without her, life would lose its sweetness. She did not rejoice in her power, neither did she regret it. She was what she was, the keeper of endings, the sovereign of cycles, the goddess whose embrace no one could escape. And so, in the aftermath of Maui's downfall, the world settled into its rhythm, life blooming and fading, love burning and cooling, time flowing forward with relentless grace. Maui's name was remembered not as the one who conquered death, but as the one who tried. His defiance became a lesson. His failure became a truth. His story became a thread woven into the endless fabric of existence. And Hinenui Tepo remained. She lay vast and luminous, her body a horizon no hero could cross, her beauty both feared and desired. To some, she was the monster who ended joy. To others, she was the mother who ended pain. But to all, she was inevitable. Death remained unconquered, and through her, the world was bound forever to the cycles of night, endings, and renewal. The tale of Maui's daring, his laughter, his downfall, settles like a shadow across the ages. His fire has long since faded, but the truth of his attempt endures, whispered from voice to voice, carried like an ember in the hearts of mortals. And at the center of it all, unchanging, eternal, lies Hinenui Tepo. She remains vast, sorrowful, and beautiful, keeper of night, guardian of endings, the goddess of inevitability. In every story told, in every breath drawn beneath the sky, she lingers. Mortals fear her, for she is the undoing of all things. They speak her name with trembling lips, shiver at the thought of her threshold, whisper prayers in hope that she may receive them gently when the time comes. Yet even in their fear there is reverence, for she is not only the shadow at the end, she is also the quiet promise that endings have meaning, that sorrow holds beauty, that no flame burns forever without the cool embrace of night. Her presence is not only terror, it is sensual inevitability. To think of her is to feel the gravity of surrender, the weight of yielding to something greater, something vast and unshakable. She is the lover who waits in silence, patient beyond measure, knowing that every soul will one day come to her. None can resist her, not through cunning, not through strength, not through trickery. She is the final intimacy, the ultimate embrace, the union that cannot be denied.
Maui tried. Others may try in dreams, in desperate prayers, in battles fought against time. But in the end, all paths lead to her. It is not cruelty, it is not punishment, it is simply the way of things, the rhythm written into existence itself. Life blooms, shines, burns, and then returns to her as rivers return to the sea. In this truth lies both sorrow and comfort, for though all must surrender, none surrender alone. Every ancestor has walked the same path, every lover, every friend, every child yet to be born. The cycle binds all together. Death is not isolation, it is reunion, a return to the embrace of Himenui Tepo, who waits with patience, with power, with sorrow that is also tenderness.
She is feared, yes, but fear is only one layer. Beneath it lies awe. Beneath awe lies desire, the unspoken recognition that to be consumed by her is not only to end, but also to be completed. She is not an enemy, but a lover clothed in night. The one who closes every story is also the one who gives every story its depth. For without her, beginnings would have no weight, love would have no urgency, fire would have no meaning. It is because of her that every moment shines so brightly before it fades. The sensuality of her role cannot be denied. The very act that Maui attempted, reckless though it was, revealed her essence. The body as threshold, the union of life and death as intimacy. To pass into her is to surrender utterly, to lay down defiance and pride and allow oneself to be held in her vastness. Mortals may tremble at the thought, but in their trembling lies fascination. For there is something irresistibly beautiful in inevitability, something haunting in the knowledge that she awaits all, without anger, without haste, without exception. Her sovereignty endures beyond the reach of heroes, beyond the prayers of mortals, beyond the shifting of stars. Empires rise and fall, oceans shift, mountains crumble, but Hinenu Tepo remains. In every ending she is there, in every silence after a final breath, in every closing of eyes, in every stillness of the heart, she is present, not as an intruder, but as the one who has always been waiting. And so, her story is not merely one of fear, but of recognition. To know her is to know the truth of existence, that all things must fade, and in that fading lies a strange kind of beauty. To resist her is to waste the moments that precede her. To acknowledge her is to live fully, to love deeply, to laugh with abandon, knowing each joy is precious precisely because it will not last forever. Maui's failure was humanity's inheritance, but it was also humanity's gift. By failing, He taught mortals that death is not to be escaped, but to be embraced as part of the whole. By entering Hinenu Tepo, he revealed that death is intimate, inescapable, and yet not cruel. His end became the mirror through which all who live must one day gaze. Hinenu Tepo herself remains the haunting figure at the heart of it all. Neither villain nor saint, neither punisher nor savior. She is inevitability made flesh, sorrow wrapped in beauty, the silence after song, the stillness after storm. She is the lover no one chooses, but everyone receives, the one who waits with patience, whose embrace cannot be denied.
To speak her name is to taste the weight of endings. To imagine her is to feel the shiver of surrender. To accept her is to step into the deeper truth of existence, that endings are not failures, but part of the rhythm of all things. She is the shadow beneath laughter, the pause between heartbeats, the hush after music. To live is to move toward her, whether in joy or in sorrow, in triumph or in despair. She is the inevitability that makes life shine, that gives longing its sharpness, that turns fleeting moments into treasured memories. All must one day walk to her, and when they do, they will find her waiting, vast and sorrowful, radiant and terrible, beautiful beyond words. They will find her not as a stranger, but as the one who has always been near, the shadow at the edge of light, the silence beneath every sound. Her presence is not punishment, nor triumph, it is completion, the intimate knowledge that all who live must ultimately surrender. Hinenui Tepo is not conquered, she is not tricked, she is not denied. She is the end, and in her all desire dissolves into inevitability. Death is not the closing of the story, it is the final union, the most intimate surrender. And in that surrender there is haunting beauty, addictive and eternal. To meet her is to know both fear and reverence, to feel vulnerability and awe entwined, to recognize the sweetness in letting go and the fire in yielding. Her embrace is patient, her shadow is vast, her presence is inevitable, and the world, with all its fleeting joys and fading glories, moves ever toward her, drawn by the quiet gravity of the final truth that death is not an enemy, but a lover, waiting for every heart that has beat, every soul that has yearned, every being that has lived. Even in the deepest sorrow, there is an intimacy, a sensual inevitability, a connection that is more profound than life itself. To surrender to Hinenui Tepo is not to vanish, but to become part of the endless rhythm of existence, to merge with the dark that cradles the dawn, to be held in a way that no mortal or god can resist. And in this, all stories find their ultimate resonance, a haunting cadence
that will linger long after the final word is spoken, the final breath is drawn, the final eye is closed.